Does Nico Iamaleava have to be elite for Vols to make noise in the college football playoff? Yes, he has to play better. No, Vols are good enough as is. So far, and I know votes are continuing to come in, it's incredibly one-sided. 100% he has to play better. If you give me those two options, Caleb, I'm going with the latter. I think the Vols are good enough to make noise. Let's define that as win a game in the college football playoff. I think they're good enough to do that as is, the way they are right now.
Okay, well, let's get one thing out of the way, which is that one thing you got wrong, Dave, is he can't beat Aaron Judge in the postseason. We can get that. Okay, since you brought Aaron Judge up. Yes. So,
well, I meant the leader, the best player, like the way Shohei Ohtani is. It is funny that neither of those players, Ohtani because of injury, have really shown up. But anyway.
Yes. I think that Nico Iamaleava is going to have a big moment. I don't know when that big moment's going to be, but there is going to be a moment where they're going to have to put the game in his hands. Look, this isn't anything new. Dave, even the 98 Tennessee team had a moment where T. Martin had to come through. I mean, that Mississippi State, that SEC championship game against Mississippi State, what happened? It was 14-10 late. The defense had not really given up a point all game. They gave up an interception that set up a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. And with 9 minutes left, what happened? Tennessee needed to score. T. Martin took over, threw a touchdown pass to Peerless Price. They get a fumble, throws one to Cedric Wilson, ball game. You don't think that moment's going to come at some point for Nico this season? I mean, it's going to have to.
Here's why I don't. I don't think it has to happen because we'll call it a Heisman moment or a Nico moment. He's not going to win the Heisman. That's not what I'm implying. But you don't have to have that against Kentucky or Vanderbilt necessarily to win those games. And we're not counting what he does against UTEP and to some extent Mississippi State because those teams are just horrible. So, Caleb, I'm not sure that he has to have that. Now, you could argue he would need to have that to beat Georgia. And you've got me there. But I think Tennessee could lose to Georgia, make the college football playoff, win a game with Nico playing slightly above average, which is basically where he is right now.
And I'm going to argue that to make noise in the college football playoff, though, he's going to have a game like that. There are likely 4 games in the playoff Tennessee would have to play if they're going to go win a natty. They're going to run into a game at some point where they would need Nico to make a play. I mean, they just will. Again, I just brought up the 98 team. Dave, I want to point this out. That Mississippi State team was not that good. I don't know if you remember. That's one of the worst teams not one of the worst, but one of the lower end of the teams with winning records they played that year. Honestly,
no, that was not a great team. And let's not forget this. T did not play incredibly great in against Syracuse in 98 because he was limited. But he did have a key run, if you remember, that I believe was on a 4th and 14 that he was
third and 14
that he was able to convert. So he did have to make plays. So I'll give you that. He has to have a moment. If you got that moment to spend, do you want to spend it against Georgia to make sure that you go 11-1 and make the college football playoff and then play in the SEC championship game? Or would you rather that moment happen in a first-round matchup in Neyland Stadium against Penn State?
No, first-round matchup in Neyland Stadium against Penn State. Because you win that first – I've told you guys I'd rather win the first-round matchup. I don't want the bye if I'm Tennessee. I keep telling you guys that. I want the Neyland Stadium home crowd, and then I want to get to play the 4 seed or 3 seed in the second round, which is going to be the Big 12 or ACC champion, because the playoff committee structured this whole thing stupidly. And I think you and I, Dave, both agree. This is the only year they're going to structure it like this, right? Someone's going to game it so badly they're going to be like, we have to fix this.
Yes, I feel like this was a little bit of a hodgepodge that they put together at the last second. Derek brings up a great point. It happened in the Bama game, Dave. He turned on his legs and dialed up a dime in the red zone. So what are the chances this is true. Yeah, what are the chances this is a mute point, as they say in Maynardville?
Mute. Isn't it moot point?
Well, in Maynardville, they say mute.
Oh my
you don't know where Maynardville is. That's way out in the country.
Oh, well, I know Brad Pitt referenced that in Inglourious Bastards, where that's where he's from.
Yes, that's because I went to the same elementary school as Quentin Tarantino.
Did you really?
I did. He spent a year at South Clinton Elementary School.
I did not know that.
Yes, that's why he makes references to Knoxville in each of his movies. But yes, Maynardville, they say mute. It's not grammatically correct, but that's what they say there. And they have great tomatoes. All right. So, Caleb, is it a moot point? As I'm sorry to all those Maynardville listeners who are like, man, Dave's a jerk. Why'd he call us out? It could have been Halls. All right. So, I think it might be a moot point. I think he may have turned the corner. Yet I don't expect him to be Hendon Hooker of 2022, Caleb. If Hendon Hooker was an A+, and we'll talk about Hendon, his career, how it compares to other transfers here momentarily, but if he was an A+, and Nico can be a B+, then I would go ahead and go so far as to say right now, at this very moment, if he plays like he did in the second half against Alabama, which again wasn't perfect, but very good, Tennessee's making the national championship game.
Well, I think he played very, very, very good in the second half against Alabama. So I would agree with you on that. But that would be kind of a breakout performance to play. Like if he plays a full game like he did in the second half against Alabama, then Dave, we're talking about a Nico that has probably 3-4 touchdown passes, 300 and something yards. I mean, he played really well in the second half of that Alabama game.
No, so, yeah, I didn't mean to downplay how he played at all. He for the whole game, I think you would agree that was about a B. Or what did you grade it in your report card?
The Alabama game, I think I gave him a B+.
Okay, so if he's at a B+ level the rest of the year, at that level, Tennessee's in the national championship game. I don't know if they win it. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Caleb, tell me I'm wrong in 30 seconds. Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. BanksandJones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, Caleb, who would you take? Or what would you predict would be Tennessee's finish this season if Nico's not maybe elite, but able to replicate what he did against Alabama? Are you going Final Four? Are you going to just make the playoffs, win a game? Where would you be in that?
I'm pretty comfortable going Final Four in that scenario. I think it's hard to not imagine Nico if he plays like he did in the second half, not making the Final Four. Now, I will say that one of the things that helps Nico in that, and you know this, Dave, you've covered a lot of teams that do this, more than playing well against Alabama, he kind of reset the clock, per se, which is to say that you can't have this sellout defense against Nico and expect him to not to not make you pay for it. It's like, do you remember the Tim Tebow 316-yard game against Pittsburgh that everybody said was like a miraculous game that he played in the playoffs? And they're like, this is proof he can play. No, what happened was Pittsburgh put 9 guys in the box and had one-on-one tight coverage on Demaryius Thomas and then just dared Tebow to beat him that way. And Tebow's like, okay, I can beat you if you make me do that. And that's kind of what they did with Nico in the second half, I felt like. So that resets the clock a little bit, which is good.
That's actually a really... I was wondering where you were going there for a second, but that turned out to be a really good analogy. It was basically, listen, kid, you weren't able to do it against Arkansas. You almost didn't do it against Oklahoma. Yeah, I think Florida, more so Alabama than Florida. Florida refused to go with that 3-3 look nearly as much as I thought they should have. But Alabama clearly wanted to challenge him to win the game, and I thought that was pretty smart. But he did it.
He did it. But they made it when you challenged him to do it and then he does it, he kind of made it look easy to a certain degree in the process. So because a lot of the plays were just easily there. So now that the clock's reset, you can't just have a sellout defense and go all in on trying to stop Nico in a certain way. That's good news. Tennessee's had a bye to really fix him in a lot of ways. It's hard for me now to say that. But all that being said, if he plays just himself, puts up the production he put against Alabama throughout the rest of the season, yeah, Tennessee can win a natty. They can definitely go to the Final Four.
Yep. Steven says, need a 16-team playoff and no bye, so every team has to play it out, and injuries and everything makes it an even playing field, and no one gets a week off. I agree with that, but that's where we are right now. And you might see that change as soon as 2026 because the Big Ten and the SEC are getting together and talking as we speak to put together a mega conference. Trust me, that's what is happening.